Imagine waking up one morning and the world as you know it seems to have stopped functioning. You reach for your phone, a habit formed over thousands of mornings. You want to check your banking app. You want to see digital confirmation that you're safe and your future is secured. But the screen remains blank. You refresh the page and the numbers representing your lifetime savings and hard work have vanished into the digital void. You turn on the news and the newscasters aren't just reporting. They're in a state of clear and instinctive panic. The message is simple, yet world-shattering. The US dollar is gone. It's not just depreciating in a typical market crisis. It has evaporated as a global standard for trade and human confidence. This is the scenario we're delving into today at FinGraphy. We're not just talking about a simple recession or a stock market crash like we've seen in the past. We are exploring a complete monetary vacuum, where the fulcrum of the global economy is pulled ashore and the ship of civilization begins to drift into unknown and perilous waters. This is the ultimate test of human resilience and the final trigger of the monetary mechanism. Close your eyes for a moment and listen to your own heartbeat. Now imagine that each beat of that heart represents a moment of your life exchanged for a single unit of value. We call it money, we call it the dollar, but what happens when the heart of the world stops beating? To understand the significance of this moment, we must first consider what the US dollar truly represents in our daily lives. For more than 82 years since the end of World War II, the US dollar has been more than just paper or digital numbers in a database. It is the universal language of global belief. Think of it like the air the economy breathes. When a coffee farmer in a remote province of Vietnam sells his coffee beans to a roaster in Germany, the transaction is almost always settled in US dollars. When an oil producer in the Middle East pumps crude oil from the ground, the price is quoted and paid in US dollars. This currency is the invisible glue that holds the disparate pieces of international trade together across oceans and continents. If that glue suddenly disappears, the entire structure of the global supply chain doesn't just slow down. It shatters into millions of disparate pieces. We're talking about a world where the concept of value is erased from humanity's collective memory. Next, we need to consider the immediate psychological shock to the individual. This is where the monetary element from research on the emotional nature of human beings comes into play. Most people believe their wealth is stored in a bank or in a retirement account. But in reality, that wealth is stored in a system of collective belief. We believe that the US dollar will buy us bread tomorrow and pay our rent next month. If that belief vanishes in a single day, primal survival fears take over. You realize that the numbers on your 401k financial statement are no longer a bridge to a peaceful retirement. They are just virtual numbers. This creates a state of monetary chaos, where people realize they've traded their best years and life energy for something that no longer exists. Furthermore, let us examine the great gridlock of international trade. Why does the world use the dollar? Because it is the only thing everyone agrees on. But in a world without the USD, trade becomes a game of musical chairs where the music never starts again. A grain ship from Australia arrives at a port in Egypt, but the captain will not unload. Why? Because the Egyptian importer wants to pay in a currency that might be worthless by tomorrow morning. The captain wants something real. Without a global standard, we return to a world of barter and localized chaos. Medicine remains on the docks while people in hospitals wait. Food rots in containers because no one can agree on how to value it. This is the visceral reality of a system without an anchor. In addition to that, we must address the absolute tragedy of the global central banks. For decades, we have seen a massive accumulation of wealth in the East. China is sitting on over $3.3 trillion. Japan is holding $1.3 trillion. Even a fast-growing nation like Vietnam has built a fortress of nearly $100 billion in reserves. But these are not piles of gold in a room. These are digital promises from the US Treasury. In our scenario, these mountains of wealth turn into a pile of digital ash. It is the greatest theft in human history without a single shot being fired. When a central bank loses its reserves, it loses its power to protect its own people. Every local currency from the dong to the yen begins to spin like a top that has lost its balance. Your savings are not just at risk. They are being pulled into the vortex. Continuing this deep dive, we have to look at the cold hard numbers of the year 2026. The USD share of global reserves has been quietly bleeding out and now sits at around 56%. This is the lowest level we have seen in modern memory. The world is trying to diversify, but it is like trying to change the engines on an airplane while it is flying at 30,000 feet. At the same time, the US national debt has surged past a staggering $38 trillion. This is a number so large that the human brain cannot truly process it. It is a mountain of debt built on a foundation of faith. When that faith breaks, the mountain collapses and it flattens everything in its path. You are not just a spectator in this drama. You are standing right at the base of that mountain. Moreover, the impact on our social contract is profound. We live in a world where we trust that our contracts will be honored and our property will be protected. But all of these legal structures are built on the foundation of a stable currency. If the dollar evaporates, the law of the jungle returns. How do you pay your mortgage if the bank does not exist? How do you collect a pension if the government has no way to calculate its value? The social fabric begins to tear at the seams as people realize that the rules they lived by for their entire lives have been rewritten in a single night. This is why the fear of loss is so much more powerful than the hope of gain. It is a primal instinct for survival that takes over when the system fails. Furthermore, let us talk about the invisible threads of the petrodollar. Since the 1970s, the world has been forced to buy oil in dollars. This created a permanent demand for the greenback. But what happens when an oil producer in the Middle East demands gold or wheat or energy credits instead? The entire recycling of global capital stops. The petrodollar was the heart of the system, and without it, the blood stops flowing to the extremities. This is why fuel prices would not just rise. They would become irrelevant because the pumps would be dry. The infrastructure of our modern life is entirely dependent on this flow of capital, and when it breaks, we go back 100 years in a matter of weeks. In addition to the physical collapse, we must consider the psychological toll of the evaporation of the dream. We have been conditioned to believe that money equals freedom. But in this scenario, we realize that money was actually a form of control. When the dollar vanishes, the illusion of freedom goes with it for a time. People lose their sense of purpose. If your bank account is empty, what is the point of going to work? This leads to a total breakdown of productivity. The factory worker and the software engineer both stay home because the reward for their labor has turned into a ghost. This is the ultimate trap of a fiat currency system. We are all participants in a dream, and when we wake up, the world is cold. Moreover, we must look at the winners of this dark scenario. The winners are not those with the most zeros in their bank accounts. The winners are those who hold the fundamentals of life. This means land that can grow food. It means sources of clean water. It means the physical tools of production. In a world of digital ghosts, the man with a hammer and a garden is a king. This is a return to the basics of human value. It is a reminder that we have spent too much time focusing on the representation of wealth and not enough time on wealth itself. The day the dollar evaporates is the day we are forced to look at reality without any filters. Continuing this journey, we must address the question of debt. In 2026, we are living in a world of debt. We borrow from the future to pay for the present. But if the dollar is gone, the debts are wiped out, but the credit is also destroyed. You might not owe the bank for your car anymore, but you also cannot buy a new tire because the credit system is dead. It is a clean slate that feels like a prison. The engine of capitalism is fueled by credit, and without it, the engine seizes. We are left with the wreckage of a civilization that tried to live beyond its means for too long. Moving forward into the mechanics of hyperinflation in the wake of a dollar collapse. When the global anchor is gone, every individual nation will try to print its own way out of the crisis. This is a natural human reaction to a lack of liquidity. But as we have seen in countries like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, printing money without a stable foundation only leads to a faster descent into the abyss. In our scenario, this would happen on a global scale. The value of a loaf of bread could double between the time you enter the store and the time you reach the register. This is the point where the money trigger becomes a life or death struggle. The social order begins to break down when the currency can no longer facilitate the basic needs of the population. People stop going to work because their salary is worthless before they even receive it. Furthermore, we must examine the impact on the technology sector. Modern technology and the internet are built on a global infrastructure that requires massive capital investment and international cooperation. If the USD disappears, the funding for this infrastructure dries up, we could see a regression in our technological capabilities. The world could become disconnected as satellite systems and undersea cables are no longer maintained because the companies that run them have gone bankrupt. The digital world, which we take for granted, could become a luxury of the past. This would further isolate communities and make the recovery process even more difficult. In addition to that, we have to consider the role of the military in a post-dollar world. The US military is the ultimate backstop of the dollar's value. But maintaining a global military presence now demands an annual budget approaching $1 trillion. If the currency fails, the ability of the United States to project power vanishes. This creates a massive power vacuum in every corner of the globe. Old regional conflicts that were suppressed by the presence of a superpower would reignite. We would see a rise in local warlords and regional skirmishes as nations fight over the remaining physical resources like clean water and arable land. The world becomes a much more dangerous place when there is no longer a global policeman funded by the world's reserve currency. Continuing this analysis, we must look at the impact on human migration. When an economy collapses, people move. We would see a mass exodus of people from urban centers to rural areas in search of food and safety. We would also see millions of people trying to cross borders to find a place that is more stable. This would put an incredible strain on the nations that are trying to maintain some level of order. The refugee crisis would be unlike anything we have ever seen in recorded history. This is the human cost of a monetary collapse. It is about families being uprooted and the total disruption of the human story. Moreover, we need to talk about the collapse of the education and healthcare systems. These are the pillars of a civilized society, but they are also highly dependent on a stable financial system. Without the dollar to pay doctors and teachers and to buy medicine and books, these systems would grind to a halt. We would see a return to a world where healthcare is a privilege of the few and education is a luxury that most cannot afford. The progress we have made in the last century in terms of health and literacy could be erased in a decade of monetary chaos. Furthermore, let us explore the idea of a new social contract. In the ruins of the old system, new leaders would emerge. They would promise stability and food in exchange for loyalty and power. We could see a return to more authoritarian forms of government as people are willing to trade their freedom for the security of a guaranteed meal. This is a common pattern in history. When the economy fails, the people look for a strong man to save them. The disappearance of the dollar could lead to a global wave of political regression that takes generations to undo. In addition to that, we must consider the environmental impact of a global collapse. On one hand, industrial production would slow down, which might lead to a temporary reduction in carbon emissions. But on the other hand, people would become desperate and would turn to any source of energy they could find. We would see mass deforestation as people burn wood for heat and cooking. We would see the unregulated extraction of minerals and resources as local groups try to find anything of value to trade. The long-term health of the planet could be sacrificed for the short-term survival of the human population. Moving into the final blocks of our discussion, we must think about the spiritual and philosophical impact of this event. For a long time, we have defined ourselves by what we own and by our position in the financial hierarchy. If that hierarchy is destroyed, we are forced to ask ourselves who we are without our bank accounts. This could lead to a spiritual awakening for some, as they find value in community and creativity and nature. But for many, it would be a source of deep despair. The loss of the financial ego is a painful process, but it is one that we might all have to face one day. Continuing this thought, we must recognize that the end of the dollar is not the end of the world. It is the end of an era. Humans are incredibly resilient, and we have survived the collapse of many great empires and currencies before. We will build something new. It might be better, or it might be worse, but it will be different. The key is to stay informed and to stay flexible. Do not put all your trust in a single system. Diversify your life and your skills as much as you diversify your assets. Furthermore, let us talk about the importance of information in a crisis. When the dollar evaporates, the truth becomes the most valuable commodity. Those who understand what is happening and why will be in a much better position to protect their families and their communities. This is why we do what we do here at FinGraphy. We provide the deep dives and the analysis so that you can see through the noise and prepare for the reality of the future. The more you know, the less you fear. In addition to that, we must consider the role of cooperation. In a post-dollar world, the groups that work together will be the ones that thrive. The lone wolf might survive for a while, but the community that shares resources and knowledge will build the future. This is a time to strengthen your bonds with your neighbors and your family. Your social capital will be more important than your financial capital. Furthermore, we must look at the long-term recovery. It took centuries for the world to move from the fall of Rome to the Renaissance. We hope that with our modern knowledge and communication, we can move through the coming transitions much faster. But it will still be a long and difficult road. We must be prepared for a marathon, not a sprint. The reconstruction of a global financial system will be the greatest challenge of the 21st century. Moreover, let us reflect on the beauty of simplicity. A world without the constant pressure of the global financial market might be a slower and more meaningful world. We might spend more time with our families and more time in nature. We might learn to appreciate the things we have instead of always wanting more. The collapse of the dollar could be the catalyst for a more sustainable and human-centric way of life. Continuing this journey, we must always remember that the power to create value is within us. We are the ones who give money its value. We are the ones who build the businesses and the technology and the culture. If the dollar is gone, we still have that power. We will create a new way to exchange that value. We will find a new language of trust. The human spirit cannot be bankrupted. In addition to that, we must stay vigilant. There will always be those who try to take advantage of chaos. We must protect ourselves from the scams and the false promises that will inevitably arise during a transition. Stay grounded in reality and do not let fear cloud your judgment. Trust your instincts and your research. Furthermore, we must look at the global south. Many countries in the developing world have been marginalized by the dollar-based system. A collapse of the dollar could provide an opportunity for these nations to build a more equitable system that serves their interests. We could see a more balanced global economy where wealth is more evenly distributed. This is a potential silver lining in a very dark cloud. Moreover, we must think about the next generation. What kind of world will we leave for our children if the dollar evaporates? We have a responsibility to teach them about the true nature of value and the importance of resilience. We must prepare them for a world that is very different from the one we grew up in. Moving toward the end of our script, we must reinforce the idea that preparation is everything. Not just financial preparation, but mental and emotional preparation. The world is changing faster than ever before, and the old certainties are fading away. The US dollar has had a long and successful run, but its future is not guaranteed. In addition to that, we want to thank you for being a part of the FinGraphy community. We are here to help you navigate these complex and often frightening topics. Your support allows us to continue our research and to provide this high-density analysis. Finally, let us conclude with a message of hope. No matter what happens to the dollar or the global economy, we are in this together. We will find a way through the darkness and into a new light. The world is a beautiful and mysterious place, and our financial systems are just a small part of it. Keep learning and keep growing and keep your head held high. Furthermore, let us dive deeper into the historical echoes of this collapse. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Conference established the dollar as the world's reserve currency. For over 82 years, this has allowed America to run massive deficits while the rest of the world absorbed the inflation. This is what Charles de Gaulle called the exorbitant privilege. But every privilege comes with an expiration date. When the world no longer wants to hold those green pieces of paper, the privilege turns into a curse. We are seeing the early signs of this today in 2026 as nations seek alternatives to the SWIFT payment system. The dollar is no longer just a currency. It is a weapon, and like all weapons, it can be turned against its wielder. This is the danger of a single point of failure in the global economy. If the dollar fails, there is no plan B that is ready to go. We are looking at a period of prolonged transition where the rules are written in real time. In addition to that, we must consider the role of precious metals in more detail. Gold and silver have been money for 5,000 years. They do not require a bank or an internet connection or a government decree to have value. In a post-dollar world, those who hold physical metal will have a significant advantage. But it is not just about hoarding gold. It is about understanding the role of real assets in a portfolio. We are moving from an era of financialized wealth where everything is a derivative of something else to an era of tangible wealth. This means owning things you can see and touch and use. This is the ultimate hedge against a currency that can be deleted with a keystroke. We must rethink our entire approach to saving and investing. The old models of diversify into stocks and bonds are based on the assumption that the dollar is a constant. If the constant becomes a variable, everything else breaks. Furthermore, we need to talk about the energy reality. The dollar is backed by the US military, and the US military is powered by oil. The petrodollar system ensured that every nation needed dollars to fuel their cars and heat their homes. If oil is priced in something else, the fundamental demand for the dollar disappears. We are seeing the rise of the petro-yuan and other bilateral trade agreements that bypass the dollar entirely. This is the slow-motion collapse that precedes the sudden evaporation. We must pay attention to these shifts in the energy markets because they are the leading indicators of monetary change. Energy is the master resource, and the currency that controls energy controls the world. When that control shifts, the entire geopolitical order is recalculated. We are living through the most significant transition in human history since the Industrial Revolution. Moreover, we must address the concept of the digital dollar or the central bank digital currency. Governments are racing to create their own digital versions of the dollar to maintain control in a world of private cryptocurrencies. But a digital dollar is still a dollar. It is still a liability of a government that is $38 trillion in debt. Moving from paper to digital does not solve the fundamental problem of insolvency. It only makes the control more efficient. We must be careful not to mistake a change in form for a change in substance. The real problem is the erosion of trust in the institution itself. Whether the dollar is on a piece of paper or a screen, its value depends on the credibility of the issuer. If that credibility is gone, the currency is gone. We must look for systems that are based on rules rather than the whims of politicians and central bankers. Continuing this exploration, let us look at the impact on the global supply chain in more detail. Most people do not realize that a simple smartphone contains parts from dozens of countries. These parts are traded back and forth in a complex web of transactions that are all settled in dollars. If the dollar vanishes, the web is torn apart. A factory in South Korea cannot buy chips from Taiwan because they cannot agree on a payment method. A manufacturer in Vietnam cannot sell shoes to a retailer in New York because the financial bridges are down. We are looking at a return to a much simpler and less efficient world. This means higher prices and fewer choices for everyone. The era of the global consumer is built on the stability of the dollar, and when that stability is gone, the lifestyle we have enjoyed for decades will be a memory. We must learn to produce more of what we need locally. Furthermore, we must consider the impact on the global real estate market. For years, investors from all over the world have poured their dollars into property in London and New York and Sydney as a safe haven. But what happens to those values when the currency they are priced in is gone? Real estate is a local asset, but its value is driven by global capital. If global capital is locked up, property values will crater. We would see a massive wealth destruction in the middle and upper classes who have tied their net worth to their homes. This is the visceral pain of the dollar collapse. It is not just about losing the cash in your wallet. It is about the loss of the equity in your home and the value of your business. We are looking at a total reset of the wealth hierarchy. Moreover, let us talk about the importance of mental health and spiritual resilience. In a time of total economic collapse, your biggest enemy is fear. Fear can lead to panic, and panic leads to bad decisions. We must learn to stay calm and focused when everyone else is losing their heads. This requires a strong internal foundation. We must find value in things that are not financial. This means our health and our relationships and our sense of purpose. The day the dollar evaporates will be a day of great suffering, but it can also be a day of great awakening. We will be forced to confront the truth about what really matters in life. We will be forced to rebuild our world on a more sustainable and honest foundation. This is the ultimate challenge of our generation. In addition to that, we must stay informed about the rise of decentralized finance. The blockchain technology provides a way to trade and store value without a central authority. While these systems are still in their infancy, they represent a possible future where money is no longer controlled by a few people in a room. We must learn how these systems work and how to use them safely. They are not a magic solution, but they are a tool that can provide a measure of independence in a world of government-controlled currencies. We must be proactive in educating ourselves and our communities. The future belongs to those who are prepared to adapt to new realities. We are moving from a world of centralized trust to a world of decentralized verification. Furthermore, we must reflect on the role of the individual in this transition. You are not a helpless victim of global forces. You have the power to make choices that will protect you and your loved ones. This means being smart about your debts and your assets and your skills. It means building a network of people you can count on. It means being a source of value for others. In a world of monetary anarchy, the most valuable thing you can have is a reputation for honesty and capability. People will always need to trade, and they will always look for people they can trust. Focus on being that person. Your character is the only asset that can never be inflated away or stolen by a bank. Moreover, we want to talk about the importance of being local. For years, we have been told that the world is a global village. But in a crisis, the only village that matters is the one you live in. We must reconnect with our neighbors and our local producers. We must build local food systems and local energy networks. We must learn to be more self-sufficient as a community. The more we can do for ourselves, the less we will be affected by the collapse of the global financial grid. This is not about being a hermit. It is about being a resilient member of a strong local community. This is the secret to surviving and thriving in the post-dollar world. We are returning to our roots as human beings. Finally, let us conclude with a message of action. Do not wait for the news to tell you that the dollar is in trouble. The signs are all around us in 2026. Start today to build your own personal safety net. Start today to learn a new skill or to connect with your community. Start today to rethink your relationship with money and value. The day the dollar evaporates will be a shock, but it does not have to be a disaster for you. You have the knowledge and the power to navigate this change. Stay focused and stay informed and stay strong. This is Nut Tai Chin, and this has been a FinGraphy deep dive. We will see you in the next one as we continue to pull back the curtain on the world of finance. We are here to help you stay ahead of the curve. Furthermore, we must recognize that the USD is just one chapter in the long history of human money. Before the dollar, there was the British pound, and before that, the Dutch guilder. Every reserve currency eventually reaches a point of overextension and decline. We are simply living through the natural end of a cycle. This understanding allows us to see the situation with more clarity and less fear. We are not experiencing the end of the world. We are experiencing the end of a specific financial arrangement. This shift is inevitable and necessary for the next stage of human development. We must embrace the challenge and the opportunity that it brings. We are the architects of the new system that will follow. In addition to our final thoughts, we want to emphasize that the ultimate goal of FinGraphy is to empower you. We want you to be the master of your own financial destiny. We want you to have the tools and the information you need to thrive in any environment. Thank you for your trust and for being a part of this journey with us. We are dedicated to your success. Stay tuned for more deep dives into the heart of the global economy. We will continue to explore the forces that shape our world and our wallets with the same level of intensity and precision. This is our promise to you. The world is changing, but we will be here to guide you through it. Moreover, as we sign off, please remember to share this message with those you care about. The more people who are prepared, the more stable our communities will be during the transition. We are all in this together, and our collective resilience is our greatest strength. Let us work to build a future that is based on real value and real trust. This is the path to true financial freedom and a better world for all. Thank you for listening, and remember to keep your eyes on the horizon. Stay safe and stay strong and keep moving forward. We will see you in the next video.